Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of TalkCivils. My guest today is Bill Guo, and we're talking all about his work with AI in the rail industry. We start off by talking a little bit about his career to date, so you get a sense of what experience he has and where that's come from. And then we go into the details of what he's up to with AI, and specifically AI for the rail industry. Bill's clearly very passionate about what he does, but he also has an interesting take and way of explaining his thoughts on AI, what it can and can't do, and what he thinks the future is potentially going to look like. I really hope you enjoy the episode. Please do like and subscribe and share with all your friends and colleagues. It really helps me to grow the podcast and in turn bring more great guests onto the show. Well, hi Bill, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. I think we're going to have a really interesting chat about some things that you're doing with the rail industry and AI. I'm fascinated to find out a little bit more about what you've got going on. But perhaps could we start with what's your experience with the rail industry and how did that lead into the situation you're in now?
Yeah. Thanks, Nick, for having me. It's a great pleasure. My name is Bill Guo. I started with railway since I started my career a decade ago. I joined my rail undergraduate scheme on the civil engineering degree after graduate from Imperial College. I spent less than 5 years with Network Rail, worked my way up to managing a large portfolio of renewal and enhancement portfolio in the southern region. And once I got chartered, I decided to look at on the supplier side, on the consultancy side, and just don't want to be part of the woodwork. They stay for a client organization that large, that long, and you start to fear about this is the only thing I could do. So I start to test the other half of my brain. So I went to Jacobs, the engineering consultancy. There was a role coming up as engineering manager. I was put on HS2 engineering delivery partner straight away for another 2 years and deliver one of the biggest depot once it's built in the whole country is Washwood Heath and NSCC depot. And I delivered the concept design, scheme design for well above 200 designers on both sides of the fence and delivered 10,000 plus deliverables and 3,000 plus comments closed out. And that 2 years was very big grind of mine and was recognized, a few rewards and recognitions. And that got me thinking about doing even something more challenging as an engineer. As we do engineer, we talk about engineer, but we're really good at selling engineering. So I was thinking test my business acumen side of my brain. And I went on to the entrepreneur route, which is joining a design consultancy that have a presence in the north, but have no presence in the south, especially in the railway sector, where I started the first railway division for them. And that had started 2 years at the beginning, no office, no people, no process, and no clients, no pipeline. I have to starting from the standstill point. And eventually that grind got me to a point that we earning fairly competitively and got onto some very, very big framework. And then fast forward half a year ago, I decided to jump out of the hoop, and we can talk about a bit more about the motive of all that. But now I'm a founder of Ultimate X and looking at the junction between AI and railway and engineering.
You fitted so much in a relatively short space of time. Can we go back to your time with Network Rail and just set the scene as to what sort of experience you were getting? Now, though you wouldn't have been presumably design side, but you would have been reviewing design work. How did you find that fresh out of university?
A lot of people come to me ask, where do they start with their career in the engineering and railway? And there's a few spectrum. You've got clients, you've got consultants, you've got contractors, you've got big and small sizes, and especially go to the big, you've got different division and departments. So I think that question really leads me to think about that recommendation and keep giving people to where would I see the best place to start is where you want to start by understanding the root business, the business as an industry and how it operates, how different parts and regions and sectors, they interact with each other. That experience, especially on the graduate scheme, where it gives you a lot of freedom and a lot of support, in hindsight, very, very structured support framework on the graduate scheme. What it does is basically give you 4 6 month bite-sized placements Like there is a clear start date, a clear finish date, and there is a smart objective you have to set on day one and sign off by replacement manager. You have to achieve them to be signed off by replacement for you to continue the next one. So every placement feels like a complete different experience because the company is so big, so huge, and it feels like on its own it's an industrial placement right off the bat. But right after university, you learn a lot. If you be a sponge, you get a lot of experience from that. So I can think back and think about a lot of the attributes I signed off as ICE, the chartership review. A lot of them come from that, and I can't think of if I join a small or on a supplier side, or I could be quite easily pigeonholed into one role throughout my career, especially early stage. It'd be quite difficult. So yeah, that was really valuable. I can't recommend more on that.
Okay, and I suppose coming from a position of being a design consultancy where we tend to be producing the designs, sending them to someone like you for review, we obviously there's an awful lot of skill and experience goes into putting those together. It's then gone to someone who's got to review that, and it always feels like that person needs to have seen an awful lot before they can actually give that a fair overview. But it sounds like perhaps the way in which they're training you is allowing you to get that experience relatively quickly and still give you the skills to I suppose work it out. You're going to have to learn for yourself what you're looking at. Did you find you had that confidence relatively quickly to do those sorts of reviews, or were you looking to others to help you? How did that work?
I think that's a really good one. I think at the beginning, the confidence took a lot of time and much longer time than thought to build. Coming from a fairly strong technical background in terms of the technical aspect, when it comes to railway, and railway is a lot of moving pieces. But if you look at individual of them, they are fairly simple in its core. So it's connecting those relatively simple stuff, but very convoluted processes and governance. So on the technical side, it's quite easy to build confidence. A lot of things are very, very straightforward when it comes to calculations, when it comes to analysis, and a lot of things I actually learned from university early stage to review those drawings and calculations is very, very straightforward for me. And the confidence was specifically lacking about the business route and the business knowledges. And that is very, very difficult to build, especially at the beginning if you don't open your mouth and ask a lot of silly questions. At the early stage, I always say that you have the privilege and that you don't have in the later days. It's a very hidden rule, is that you are allowed to ask silly questions without being taken a second look. So at the beginning, I took a lot of the advantage of those opportunities, ask a lot of questions. And I kind of have the mindset of always think from first principle and always think about all the 5 whys rather than just leave the question on the surface and then rinse and repeat next time without really understanding why we're doing that in the first place. So that really helped me to build the confidence in a relatively short span of time.
Yeah, that's exactly the same advice that on the previous episode, Steve Richardson said, understand why you're doing what you're doing. If you ask a question, why can't we do it differently, that you actually understand the answer. And that's what really makes the most out of your experience. So then fast forward to your time with Jacobs. What skills do you think you took from your Network Rail experience to help them to deliver? I mean, it does feel a little bit like they've taken someone from the inside and gone, okay, we'll put them in charge because at least they know what it is that Network Rail are looking for. But I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, Network Rail give me the experience managing a lot of moving pieces. And when it comes to boil down the role of the at the end of my Network Rail tenure, is really about competence management, understanding what people is good at, place where they need to be placed and manage them. So one of the very key transferable skills is I'll be able to transfer that onto a very large single piece and a lot of moving parts, but under the same envelope. So that kind of multidisciplinary skill set, especially when it comes to competence management and communication and coordination, interdisciplinary check and review, that sort of skills really, really transferable. But it was quite a different context. In that role, there's a lot of small pieces when it comes to renewal and enhancement. It's just millions of small bits, and there are a lot of patterns, and there are a lot of efficiency and automation could be realized in there. And when it comes to HS2, and that depot itself is a mini railway. Everything apart from passenger, no passenger is allowed for that depot, but everything else we worked out. There was 25 disciplines in there. I never worked with that amount of discipline. You got ergonomics, you got fire, you got everything in railway that I could ever think of, and you got large areas that they all carry different sensitivity and criticality and risk management. And there's a very steep learning curve. And at Jacobs, I have to say, I was very fortunate that we're running the first cohort of engineering management training course. And that gave me a lot of feeling to how to manage them all properly. But a lot of them are learning on the job.
You mentioned the word automation there, and I get the sense of where this was going. Did you know that at the time? I get the impression you're always looking around for what experience have I got, what experience do I want to get. Probably at that stage of taking the Jacobs job, there was probably such a long list of experience that you would like to have that you could pretty much do anything, and you tick some of those off. At what stage in there do you think you started thinking, what's the end game here? What am I actually aiming for, and which gaps do I want to fill? You're obviously aware of automation. You talked later about then going and building a business. Did you know at that stage that's where you wanted to be going?
Yeah, well, that last question, that's a no. I didn't know where I was going. I was just to follow where my brain is most entertained when I was doing the task, and I can quite easily tell if I keep doing this for another 10 times, how my brain state gonna be ended up with, and that was quite clear to me. In the state of both Nauru and Jacobs, I found a lot of opportunity to automate, and there was actually some good examples I did. And I gave you example that in Nauru there was a form called CRT, and I had to automate this CRT process, and I have to actually almost kill some sacred cows in the process to make some disruptions to the existing process, and just really challenge why are we doing we're doing, and challenge the status quo. It is what it is, and what I name is the cost of it is what it is a lot of efficiency come from. And when that came to me, I just couldn't let it pass me, and that just stuck with me, and I would just spend a lot of energy willingly to see how those process could be automated. And CRT, eventually, that's a good example. I actually put a bit of a recognition in the region that I standardized CRT production for different portfolios. And kill a few jobs, but create a few jobs as in the meantime as well. But that will give me the first impression of what automation could do, and how automation fascinates me as a personal curiosity, and that actually later on flow to the passion what I'm doing now.
Did you see any unintended consequences there? Because often it seems frustrating when people say to you, it is what it is, but sometimes underlying that, there are other good reasons why change hasn't happened, and it kind of gets swept under that one mantra, but you then miss some of the other details.
That's it, yeah. It's a very, very fine balance, and it's not only the actual reasoning or the logical reason, there is also behavior, there's also emotional, and there's a lot of nuance to it that, especially for young railway engineers, it took me a lot of time to learn those nuance, and to learn a lot of things were written in blood, in sweat, in blood, especially when it comes to natural safety critical standards, processes, why they exist in the first place. If you step back, look in the history, or talk to a few very, very senior people who actually experienced those changes, they will tell you this is what actually happened, and it's why we are doing what we're doing. That does give me a bit of a reflection when we're trying to bring those changes, but it doesn't intimidate me. It more of a giving me, okay, I have to understand why it exists, then I can give a better reason why I should change. And
Straight back to the why question.
that's it. So that is the value curve. I can communicate better with people because I know where I came from, even though I didn't experience it. And I think that really helped me compared to a lot of other changes, which is more of looking at what we need to do now, but it didn't trace back to their origin. I think that's what it needed for the railway, because I always say that railway sometimes is a victim of our own success. We're very successful the past, decades, 200 years, just a real 200 years anniversary recently. And when I speak to a lot of people from other country who look up railway in the UK and really look at the reputation of the UK railway, and why, and when I talk about a lot of the friction points and opportunity to automate, etc., and they say, why are there so much friction point you see, but we see a lot of good points in the railway that we didn't learn? I said, because we sometimes are victim of our own success, and we have to look at whether something are they needs to be kept from the first principle, or they actually are sacred cow that needs to be looked at or butchered.
Yeah, fair enough. I think going back to my previous question about the vision that you had or perhaps didn't have as to where you were, excuse me, as to where you were going, I think it can be a great relief to people to hear that you don't need to know exactly where you're heading. Just be cognizant of the experiences that you're looking for, make the most of them, and follow what interests you, but just do it to the best of your ability, which I get the impression is exactly the route that you're taking. So you went off and noted that you wanted some experience in building a business, expanding a business. You went off and did that clearly very successfully as well. There's a little bit of a theme running here, and then you decided to step away and do something on your own. Can you talk to us about what's Automate X? What are you up to? What are you aiming to do?
Yeah. So when I was doing my previous kind of entrepreneur business within the business journey, there was a lot of things that I have to do outside of the box to make us have a chance to leverage our expertise in-house and also leverage a lot of things. So I started to experiment AI and automation and make our different part of the operation, such as sales and lead generation, and then comes to tender and tender return, and comes to constantly answering for proposals and quote requests, and then building internal kind of commercial management, and eventually even using AI to read standards and finding information. And the more we do it, the better quality I see, as long as it's been opened up in the right way, or effective way and responsible way, actually make a really big impact on not only the bottom line, the growth margin, making us more efficient and bring more better value for the client, but it also make the team more streamlined, and the team morale is better as well, because they see they are working on something that is more future looking rather than keep doing the old fashioned way. And there's a number of wow moments that me personally experiencing. And as me being me, I just looked back at the history and looked back where all this came from and why it just all of a sudden become a hype in the last 3-4 years. And then I got more and more fascinated, and I started to learn about machine learning, deep learning in my spare time, and pick up those certificates and going to some even hackathons, very, very silly ones. But it just hooked me, and I felt like there's even fourth part of my brain I wanted to unlock now, and I always wanted to start my own business, so I have to start something. I have to give birth to something. I wanted to create things out my bare hand, albeit at the beginning very, very raw, and that's why I keep going from the big to supply chain to small, and then the further I go, the lower the food chain I'm going to, because it's a feel more owned, feel more like a visionary and missionary rather than mercenary, and that's really important to me. So all of that factor coming together, And I start to hearing about my clients and my peers in the railway talking about AI, and they see this is the future. And I couldn't do much if I stayed in my role in the previous, because that's a different business scope. Therefore, I felt like I pulled a trigger, and I did take 2 months of a career break to do a bit more structure and thorough learning before I came out. But yeah, here we are.
And how accessible is it to understand the way in which the basics of AI are working and large language models and machine learning? I mean, you're clearly a bright guy, but do you need to be at the top of your game to understand it, or is it relatively accessible to someone who's just fascinated?
I think the best learning, the best teacher is interest. If you don't have an interest in anything, learning that, even though they are very accessible, is very difficult. But if you have a passion or interest in there, you feel like that's the vision, and you become a visionary. Things will just naturally flow to you. And when I open up that mind, that I think this is the future, and I'm going to devote my time into it, your fingertip start to have the magic of typing the right thing into the browser or into the large language model, and they start to spell out everything. And I just keep asking, keep working, and keep asking really good questions, and then they give you a link. Once you open that link, that's another 2 months of learning. I started to get onto some of the automation courses, learning about Python, and I spoke to, then I was introduced a number of companies who early startup, and I just message those CEOs and say, okay, I'm fascinated what you're doing. Why don't we have a half an hour chat? Because I have something you might want to hear, because I came from the railway as an insider, as a domain expertise, and you have something. I built so much relationship as well. And the door just keep opening, and once one door opens, there's 5 doors behind them. But it's led by passion, it's led by interests, and that's the root. That's a infinite few that you have to have in the first place. Everything else built on that.
Yeah. So Automate X, what's your elevator pitch? What's your business trying to do as of right now? I'm sure it's going to evolve, but
That's it. I mean, it's such a young company. We probably evolve that pitch line or that tagline, strap line every 2 months. Currently, I think what the industry needs is how to unpack AI. It's both from not only technical side, and the technology is there, is ready, is available for the past decades. It's also from skill set side, the skill of the industry, and also the knowledge, the level up of people's awareness and knowledge and skills. And also come from ethical, how can we approach this topic ethically, understanding how can we make it human centric, how can we make it, it's means to an end rather than just go for it. And then the governance, the strategy, and you can see last year DFT put their strategy on AI action plan in November. GBRX, the GBR Shadow Innovation Arm, put their AI action plan for industrial action plan in April. OR recently did theirs. So the industry is evolving, and as you know, I'm helping IC to form its own opinion as well. So what Automate X is trying to do is to bridge a lot of those moving pieces on from the top level, starting from the top. That we're helping railway leaders, to think more strategically about AI, and that have to from the top down a lot of those decisions. And then when it comes to actually implementing it, when we look at RIRL, the Rail Innovation Readiness Level, the level 4 to level 6 is the most difficult level to cross. That's from pilot to prototype to actually implementation with real railway data. And in the GBRX AI action plan, I actually named this as pilot graveyard for AI. And because the railway is full of AI pilots, but none of them rarely lands. And there's a reason behind that. And that's what Automate X is trying to solve, is to make AI implementation actually land and actually have a lasting, calculatable effect for railway teams or businesses, and that from the top, from the middle, which is implementation, and from the bottom as well, where we actually build things that people love using, not forced to use, but love using. So, if I summarize that in a strapline, AutomateX is railway AI transformation partner. We help accelerate AI adoption for the railway businesses by answering 3 questions. First, where AI fit in your existing rail operation? Second is which part of that operation you should prioritize first. So talking about ROI and business cases. And third is how do you build something that your team love using?
You talked about working at 3 levels there. The top level where it's talking about the legislation, I suppose, around the use of AI and the control of it. You looked at the middle level where you're talking about where's best to implement it. How do you go about doing that as a business case? And at the bottom level, you're talking about producing a product which someone can actually use. Do you have products that you put out there for people to use, or are you developing them on a case by case basis?
At the beginning, we were developing a signature product, and we still are. And that's called Scriptive. It's actually trademarked. It got the existing, it got the entire kind of agentic workflow that is focused on PACE, which is the assurance governance for the railway sector in the UK. Focusing on PACE deliverables and spotting lighting for a while in terms of Form G, Form C, basically the assurance vehicles to convey those renewal and enhancement portfolios for the permanent and temporary work design. And that is still developing. Our target has always been launching that in Q3, and we're still on track to launch that signature product. However, our core service is more like what we want to say is we can productize our service. Is that if it is an AI strategy, obviously that's not a software. It's really our domain expertise input, our brain at the think tank to the strategic senior leadership team. When it comes to the actual team, they have their AI motion, but they don't know where to have a stab at it. We can provide guidance and trainings and even a structured bookshop, work camp, which is a AutomateX boot camp, which you can find on my website, to help them exactly answer that 3 questions: where, what, and how. So when it comes to the later stage where the team already have their challenge statement, they want to automate the specific thing, we jump over the business case because they think is very, very worth automating with AI or without AI, then we do custom build. And that's what I mean by productize our service, is that our service is to adapt our engine, which is powering everything, including Scriptive and other custom build, but adapt that engine and then point at that specific problem of that client team that we're serving, and then provide eventually a bespoke custom production grade software for them that they can keep using and love using.
Is it a deliberate decision to be working on those 3 levels? Because it must be hard to convince a client that you can offer those consultancy roles and that advice if you're not actually producing something or haven't produced something. Or I can imagine you're the sort of person who would offer the consultancy, but would think there's a solution here. I want to get my hands dirty and actually see if I can make one that works.
Yeah. I mean, and that kind of go-to-market strategy evolved with what the market signal gave back to me. Originally, my target was very simple. I just wanted to find help my old selves. I came from the domain expertise. I carry a lot of friction points, and I know some of them already worth doing. So I don't mind investing a lot of my own time and money to build those point solutions because I know they are worth automating. Over time, I feel like the industry doesn't need a lot of point solution from the very beginning, because you become a lot of point solutions and they don't really talk to each other. And the industry more it needs more strategic and structured thinking around AI and how to make everything sprout out from a single source of truth or single source of strategy. And that's why a lot of people come to me in terms of what the strategy. Well, they already have a skeleton of strategy, but they wanted to have a better shape or better business case or build like bolt onto it. And that's why it evolved into helping the strategy side of it. And when it comes to the lack of confidence in whether we could deliver it with our product in the first place, that's what I'm being discussing with my clients every single day. Whenever they ask me, often the first question is that do I sign up at the ticket? How much of a ticket costs? How much is a seat? They think about I'm a software vendor. That's why we are trying to differentiate from software vendors. And then I was trying to shift their thinking about this is more of an advisory first to understand the problem rather than go from the solution. It's quite easy for me to provide a solution and look at the shiny things, but you have to first diagnose yourself. We can help with that, but diagnose your existing workflow to map it out. And you can't automate anything if you can't map it out first. So that's the first step. I think a lot of team missing. They just want you to grab something, pull that into their life or their team's life, everything will be solved. And they expect innovation to be ready tomorrow, free and complete. And that's just not how it works. We first have to understand the problem, and the problem starts from everything.
What are you most worried about with AI? Are you worried about AI at all?
I worry. I become more excited talking about the limitation and what AI cannot do compared to at the beginning. I excited to talk to people what AI is capable of doing. Everyone is, I think if you look at the dial, people are probably more. It depends on the kind of demographic group of people. A lot of people are talking about more about the hype. AI can do a lot of things. But in truth, I did a kind of a Mythbuster CPD previously with around 100 network engineers in the group, and I have 14 Mythbusters in there. And one of them I remember is AI intelligent? That's just the simple question. And the truth is that AI is not intelligent. It feels intelligent. That's what the GBT is. GBT is a generative ChatGPT generative pre-trained transformer. So it is really start from that paper is attention is everything. That paper Google wrote a few years ago, and they produce this model and transformer and then train, and it basically learn the pattern from the previous words and predict the next token, and that's all that is. And then ChatGPT came out and make it very, very accessible and interactive, because it feel like you can then spill out your thinking in plain language, and then you can come up with some good answers. But they're all seemingly intelligent, but they are not truly intelligent. And I think that's a limitation of AI that often overlooked, and people think it can do a lot of things. But there's a lot of bits about AI. And when people say AI can do this or AI can't do this, and even though that sentence in its whole is right or wrong, but I just feel like we have to talk about how do we define AI in our railway context. There is a large suite of spectrum of AI in terms of technology. You've got machine learning, you've got RAG pipeline, you've got OCR, you've got all of that sort of things. Which one are you picking from that spectrum that is slotted into in your operation? And that's the first thing to understand. And there's a limitation to each part of that technology that has to be first well understood, rather than thinking AI is or isn't. And I think that limitation is very, very, very important for us to understand.
Can we dig into the really difficult question there? What do you think intelligence actually is? What does it, maybe a good way to frame it is, what do you think it needs to do differently to be intelligent that it doesn't do at the moment?
I think using AI to make decisions, using AI to manage complex workflow, and making human judgments, especially when it handles safety critical risks and hazards. And those are things I'll be very conscious of. And that's where the human intelligence come in, and it's very difficult to replicate. There's a number of occasions that I see good engineers following the rules very, very closely in terms of the railway standards and governance and processes, but they still don't really get the end result right. It's because there's the nuance of that judgment, there's nuance of that workflow that people come in with years of experiences, and that's what I call expertise. And AI can't work on its own without domain expertise or human expertise. And that's, I think, only work together is the solution. But if you leave everything with AI is not intelligent enough. It can't make those safety critical judgments. And I would separate those things, understand which part you need to live with human, which part you need to live with AI. And when it comes to a lot of the industry which really work well with AI, you look at, like media, so content generation, you look at marketing, because they are more of a probabilistic sectors. They are not deterministic. AI can't be deterministic by math. It just can't. Every time you give it input, it goes through that model, that frontier model, it came back. You can't guarantee every time you give the same one. How to make that workflow help us in a way that deterministic become something that human can control, but the probabilistic limitation can be mitigated. And that's what separates from good use of AI to not so good of use of AI.
Yeah, I think to try and put it simplistically, I've for a period thought that a lot of the AI models are about data, and if you think of it in that way, it feels like if you get your data set large enough to incorporate all of the inputs that you could possibly have, then theoretically there's no reason why it can't, as you described, make the right decision, because you're making a decision based on data. I think what you're saying is the trouble is a lot of the decisions that we have to make are not based on data. They're based on inputs from extracts of data that's the best we can get. It's not feasible to have all of the inputs. And even if we did, we don't have the ability to generate the algorithms that would create the right answer out of that data. I think the best example I came across of that was when you learn about the way in which Google Translate was developed, where the Google engineers spent years, I believe, trying to develop a system that would take words, that word translates to this, these sentences translate to this, and give it a set of rules. And it just didn't work. It was so unreliable, it gave really bad results. So when you gave it a set of data that said, this is typically what it looks like in English, this is typically what it looks like in French or Mandarin or whatever, the system was able to produce a translation which was pretty good, not perfect, and particularly not perfect when you start to translate something that's like a technical report, for example, where you've got specific things. And I've heard great examples of a hydraulic ram being translated to a water sheep, because a ram obviously is a sheep, and hydraulic water, so it's a water sheep. So it's really interesting that you're saying that's how you're defining that intelligence, and being clear about the skills that we need people to have. And I suppose that probably leads on to the next thing is how do you use AI, I suppose to say correctly, or how do you get the best out of it, but also how do you make sure that you're using it ethically and safely? One of the concerns I have with just using it personally, but also seeing my colleagues using it, is I look at it's very easy to rely on it, and you are very reliant on your assessment of its accuracy. And how do you make sure that your ability to assess that is growing fast enough and at pace with it? And if you're at the start of your career, how do you get that in the first place at all? It'd be very easy to automate a lot of simplistic things, but that's the opportunity which young engineers have to get that understanding. Have you got a bit of a thought on that?
Yeah, I think that's actually what I was trying very passionate about launching an event with IC, which is actually looking at that, how AI is reshaping civil engineer roles and a skill set because it's quite different now. When it comes to interacting with AI, I first always ask a question is, do I really need AI for this? And AI is not everything. A lot of those could be just a Python script, a TypeScript, and that will just loop itself. And that is good enough. There is no kind of large language inference in there. You don't need it. A lot of the automation I came across, they came for the AI and they leave with the automation that have no AI in it, which is actually a good thing because AI is, as I said, is probabilistic. It can't really control the input output. When it comes to advice for engineers interact with AI, I think the skill set really lives in a few layers. First is the data. The data is king. The data is definitely the king, but it's just not everything. Like people think a context window now, we're dealing with 1 million context window where you could fit 15 books of Game of Thrones in it. I understand everything, but in fact, it just commoditize and democratize every single piece of information. There is no weighting in it. There is no re-ranking in it. So that kind of feeding it as the first intuition might feels the right way of unpacking it, but it actually disservice yourself depends on what you're trying to do. So when it comes to layers, the first is the data engineering, data science. That's why you hear, there's a lot of people going to data science, data engineering degrees now to understand how to use data, how to doing the embedding, ingestion, all that data. But then there's a number of layers after that, which I came to learn as well. First is after that is context and prompting engineering, which has been quite a big thing, how to prompt an AI the right way, to work on the same data. And then context engineering, how to set the context in different shape and form. So you're talking about how to use different knowledge or context in the different way. So context engineering. And then they try and got harness engineering, how you make those contacts and those moving parts work with each other, and then have a process that actually do the eval, do the guardrail, do the human in the loop checks. So harness that system you build in a structured way. And then the latest trend is looping engineering, how to make that loop evolve and then learn itself and compounding itself and become better and better every time you use it. So there's layers of that skill set, and I think the best start is to understand how do you qualify data a good data, and how do you provide the better prompt for the use of AI.
I get the impression you're trying to make a very clear distinction between what a lot of us think of as AI use being, you open up Copilot and you ask it, where do I find this clause in the Eurocode? Because it's you kind of know it's there and you can't quite remember, and you know it's going to be a bit quicker to point you in the right direction, and you have a sense of roughly where you expect it to be. And if it gives you absolute nonsense, you just ignore it and you go, like, park that, I'll go and look myself. That's more of a Google search. Other search engines are available.
Yeah, that's it.
But that's not. It sounds that's not making any use of AI at all, really, and probably is a poor use of it, because you're looking for a very specific, correct answer. You're not looking for a probabilistic answer. You're talking about understanding when AI is appropriate, and it is about using that repeat process, make itself better as it goes along, and it's actually learning for itself about what it's doing and making use of that artificial intelligence capability. I know you said it's not intelligent, but for want of a better term at the moment, and I don't disagree with you. So someone who is thinking, you know what, I do want to understand this a bit better, I do want to get better at it, but I haven't got 2 months to go away and go and do a course. Where can people start? Where's a good place to just dip your toes in and learn the useful good habits and be aware of the bad habits to avoid?
Yeah. I mean, that 2 months of focused learning is because I have already spent around 6 or 8 months of part-time casual learning, and that casual learning was built on understanding, well, first built on a few wow moments. I feel like I've been hooked to this technology and what it actually solves. What I would suggest people first focus on is understanding the problem first. And once you understand the problem, you can start to do some experiment. And that feedback loop, we need a very short feedback loop to pick up things and pick up things as interest. We don't want to learn something that actually give us some good feedback in 6 months or 3 months. That's too long, and we will just drop it. So understand something you do on daily basis. Ask yourself, how did your last week go, and which part of the week that you think, I wish AI could do something about it. Surely it does. Everyone talk about AI now. What can AI does something about it? Type it out. Don't worry about prompt engineering or data engineering. Just ask a few of those questions that you really truly care about, and you hope something could get away from your desk next week. That you spend a lot of time on tedious and laborious tasks last week, and starting from there, and then you start to ask the really good questions because behind it you start from a problem that you think we're solving, and solving that will give you that feedback loop, that passion to solve it, because make your personal life better. And I think that's where the best place to start. When it comes to actual practical ones, and I don't want to go, suggest CS 550 or do a 3-month Python work, which I did do that in a very short span of time. But those long feedback loop come from you have to find your short ones. And if you find your short ones, you'll be pulled to the right ones. Everyone's different journey and different pace. So I don't want to suggest those, which I did go on to use the 2 months to get on with those. But probably once people get to the first loop, they will find their own ones and even better ones. And AI evolve every month. So suggesting something today might be outdated.
I think a lot of my listeners are engaged with the IC, the iStruct, and various other civil engineering institutions. I know you've got some events coming up. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what they are and how can people come and learn a little bit more and hear what you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. We are. So I'm the Informing Opinion Vice Chair on IC Regional Committee and Regional Executive Board for London Region. And on 17th of September, my first event around AI and infrastructure will be coming up. The title we're trying to talk about is a civil engineering skill set, a role will be reshaped in the era of AI when it comes to infrastructure delivery. This event is a little bit railway biased because where I come from. So a lot of the speakers I invite are from the railway. We got people from GBRX, from Network Rail, and from Tier 1 consultancies. And that event, it will be particularly interesting for young engineers who wanted to know or even get into the rail industry and know what the landscape when it comes to AI adaptation and what other railway leaders think about AI's direction of travel. That will be particularly interest, and there's plenty of engagement in networking at the end. And I heard the food and drink were really good, so that will be always a good thing.
Perfect. And I think I should point out as well that the ICE Code of Conduct's been updated recently and does talk about the use of AI and the ethics around that and our responsibilities as engineers. So I think at all levels, it should be something we should be taking a lot of interest in. I'm planning to come along and have a listen, so I'm looking forward to seeing you there.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, good to see you there.
And I suppose finally as well, if someone wants to get in contact with yourself, what's the best way to do that?
Well, yeah, some of the people following me on LinkedIn, they sometimes find it difficulty to not see me on LinkedIn. So follow me on LinkedIn and you'll see me. I do post and I try to post as much valuable things as possible. So follow me on LinkedIn will be the first course of call. I do, the website has been, I spent a lot of energy on building the website and distilled a lot of my thinking there. I got my contacts in there as well. So feel free to sign up on the wait list for Scriptive, which we're developing, or get in touch if you've got a problem you want us to take a look at. So go to automatex.uk. That's our website, and where the closer place you can find me.
Excellent. I shall put all of that into the show notes as well for anyone listening. Bill, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
I would just add, the journey itself made it interesting is not because of the end goal, it's because of the journey itself. And I call this is that I get onto a pathless path, and I do wanted to continue this path, and kind of set a experiment for a lot of people who are experimenting. There has been a period I was thinking, a lot of good people leaving railway. As you can see, the railway has taken a beating when it comes to the CP7 start and low, the budget side of things. And I was at a point that I was thinking, oh, maybe I could hang my hat off for railway because there are opportunity elsewhere. But now is looking at AI almost gave me a second skill to re-engage and re-establish the relationship between me and the railway industry. And that really fascinates me. And that's what keeps me going. I will land on this. So there are three things I'm pursuing along the journey: relationships, growth, and curiosity. And those three things keep me going. And I wanted to pick more and more of those and collaborate with my peers in the railway sector. Thank you very much, Nick, for having me.
Bill, thank you. That's fascinating. Catch you later.
Right. Ciao.
There's an awful lot to unpack from that conversation. Normally, I record these outros straight after the main recording. On this instance, I've actually needed to take a day or so just to have a think about what Bill was talking about. He made some distinctions about what intelligence actually is, and also talks about what AI can and can't do, the different types of AI. I'll be honest, I don't fully understand what the different component parts are, and I'm going to take that away and try and research that, because it's clearly very relevant to what we can do in the future. The big takeaway for me, I think, was that he pointed out that there's many tasks that people think AI is useful for, and actually we're not really making use of the AI capabilities, and nor do we need to. He's also very clear on the limitations of AI. He doesn't seem to think that that's going to change anytime soon. The skill set that we need probably isn't going to fundamentally change, but the way in which we engage with technology clearly is. And I think that's where the challenge is going to lie. If you're interested in the work that Bill's doing, do follow him on LinkedIn. He puts lots of information on there, which makes very interesting reading. As he mentioned, he's running an event in September. I'll put the link to that again in the show notes. And in the meantime, I really hope you enjoyed the episode. Lots of food for thought. Do like, subscribe, and share. It really helps me to grow the podcast and in turn bring on more great guests to the show. See you next time.